coming to our area with the independent committee on review, science review of the National Science Foundation. That's coming up on August 14th through the 16th, right up here. So we're giving them a field trip. But she mentioned that the LOSUM PDT meetings are gonna come up in August. The next one's August 20th. So LOSUM, if you remember, is the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. So that's in Clewiston, and it'll be on August 20th. And they'll have other dates set up for participation. Remember, they had over 8,000 comments in. They processed all that. They're now gonna start working towards the alternatives for the Lake Okeechobee regulations. And then lastly, the update for the integrated delivery schedule, the IDS, that big schedule I hold up with all the projects. It's up in that left corner over there. You can see all the projects are on track. And now that we have 200 million from the feds and 200 million from the state, that's their goal, is to try to get those projects fast tracked. So they're gonna update the integrated delivery schedule at a public workshop in September and finalize it in October. So we'll keep you informed as to when those are coming out too. So with that, other state agencies, is there any other state agency input? All right, as far as the state budget or budget input for 2019, I got a news release from Mr. Oberdorf, who's our representative, and Senator Dale Harold and Mary Lynn Neighbor. This makes up your local delegation of our area. These delegation meetings are starting to happen. This one is going to be in September, on September 12th, right here at Indian River State College, Chatham campus. I encourage everybody to attend, to get on, to your representatives. They're starting these delegation meetings early because remember, the session is early this coming year.
When is it starting this year?
This year's session coming up is starting in January, like January 12th or 13th. That second week in January it started. I know. They shifted because if you remember this past year, it started in March, April, and May. They meet for 60 days. That's their session. March, April, May. But prior to that, for a couple of months, they usually start committee meetings. So the committees start to form and they start meeting, they introduce bills, they legislation. We all have to kind of keep a track of all of what's going on. But these delegation meetings are the beginning of that process. So I encourage you to get to a delegation meeting, whether it's here or in Palm Beach County, St. Lucie County, wherever there's a delegation meeting. Go and voice your opinion and talk to those legislators. Mark Lawson.
You can't just voice your opinion, you have to apply to speak.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. Thanks for pointing that out. There is a format, and we can post it up there. You have to fill out a form, and you have to say, I would like to speak, and then you can be on the agenda. They usually hear from our county commissioners and state dignitaries first, and then they go down the line, but then they hear from all the organizations or groups. And I think Rivers Coalition, we ought to probably represent us and at least voice our opinion about what we want to have happen this coming state legislative session. All right, moving on to LOSUM. LOSUM, I mentioned. Alex, do you have any updates on LOSUM other than PBT meetings, is what I understand?
Yeah, I would just add that there was a report by Kimberly Miller of the Palm Beach Post saying that the Army Corps was interested in an emergency deviation to lower the lake to reduce the likelihood of toxic algae discharges. And so what does all that mean? That means that operations do matter. This bill to change the Central and Southern Florida project, as we were fighting here in Martin County in 1960, as the paper says, as Senator Bob Graham has called for in 2017 and 2019. It does matter. It's really important. It's actually kind of the biggest piece in all this. Infrastructure is great, but it's going to take us 40 years to build it all. Operations is what can change this stuff now. And so that's why this bill that we're working on, the Protect Florida Act, is so important. And so I just want to reiterate that operations are what are going to save us in the next decade. The infrastructure is going to take a long time to build. I, for one, am not working on this so that I can fight this in 20 years. So we need relief in this community, and operations is how we get there. One of the big questions we have is how much water can we send south in the dry season? And that's a question that the district can help us answer. And I haven't actually heard anyone say how much. But we know that there is extra capacity in the system that we don't use, be it west of the Caloosahatchee. We could send about 418,000 acre feet west of the Caloosahatchee in the dry season, thereby lowering the lake, improving the health of the Caloosahatchee, reducing the likelihood of discharges. We can do similar things south. We don't know how much. That's a district question in a lot of ways. And so we really need the district to look at how much capacity is south in the dry season so that we can send that water to Florida Bay, increase the health of the national park, increase the health of the bay, reduce the lake levels, reduce the likelihood of discharges. Operational priorities. Ours were created in the 1940s. Irrigation, navigation, recreation, enhancement of fish and wildlife, and flood control. Senator Graham has said on multiple occasions we need to update these priorities so that we reflect the Florida we have today. That Florida had 2.5 million people. Today's Florida has closer to 22 million people. If we don't update our congressional priorities, as the Protect Florida Act is trying to do, then we are holding out for an infrastructure solution that is not going to come for decades. So I cannot underscore enough, if you are really serious about solving this problem, you have to be attacking operations and update their operational priorities.
So that's Lake Okeechobee system operating.
So where does that toxic water go then? Because I live here and I'm thrilled to not have it come here, so where do we send it then?
Right, so it's a three-part problem if you look at this entire problem. We have an infrastructure problem, and that's CERC, we're working on that. We have an operational problem, that's the CNSF, the federal law that designates how we move water around, what our priorities are. And then we have a water quality problem, which is a state issue for the most part. So we definitely need legislation at the state level. We need to look at biosolids, septic tanks, BMPs, BMAPs, you name it, there's a long list. So operations isn't gonna change everything, but part of what exacerbates the algal blooms is operations, right? If the lake gets too high, then the submerged aquatic vegetation in the lake becomes a nutrient source as it dies instead of a nutrient sink. Back pumping further exacerbates these problems. So the way we manage the lake can exacerbate algal blooms, and that's the significance of the Corps' suggestion that we go to an emergency deviation is, you know, we can minimize the harmful impacts of this by changing the way we do it.
Right, but it's still eventually, when it is released, it does have to go somewhere. So if we're not sending it
Well,
somewhere, where are we
There
sending
was,
it?
and when we had, there was algae bloom in the lake, for instance, last year, and some of it went to the west, but it went through marshes, and it didn't really produce a lot of the toxic algae that we saw because we have no marshes in the lake. So the quality problem is an issue. We shouldn't have algae blooms in the lake, period. Why do we have those? And that's upstream, and that's what we gotta do to get the water
So
quality.
is there anything we're doing here to address those issues about the water quality? And
Absolutely.
I know it's a state level, at the
Absolutely.
state, I know that.
We're fighting for clean water here in our estuary, and that's the Rivers Coalition. So yes, we recognize north of the lake needs to be cleaned up, that watershed, so that the lake water gets to its TMDL and it's cleaning up. There won't be the algae blooms, but we still have the operational problem of water. When the water was managed for the purpose of the Central South Florida Flood Control Project, it was mainly for flood control. To discharge it to the estuaries, they had no idea what it was causing these problems. They had no idea where else to put it. So now we know that it needs to go south, and as mentioned in the dry season, the Everglades and Florida Bay and all that need that water to flow south. It used to take about 16 months to go through that river of grass and flow south. We have lost that. We've blocked it off of the dam. We shunted it out to the east and west coast primarily.
Yes.
So I got your question, but.
I know, and I agree, but truly nothing has changed, and nothing will change with this bill.
Mark, well, let's not argue the bill at this point. Let's just go back.
Well, I
to
do
what-
argue it because it detracts from the real solutions.
Well, you can argue that. I have a
Okay,
question. in the back.
thank you.
But all the efforts on the pollution is voluntary best practices, and why isn't more being done for that? More being done about the septic tanks in Sewell's Point.
Well, that's a good point. And we have, there's been over 8,000 septic tanks converted over to central sewage system, but you still have the problem of biosolids when that happens. So let's try to not get into too much of an argument at this point or a discussion. Water quality is an issue. Septic tanks are an issue, but they don't contribute 10 to maybe 12% of the total nitrogen loading into the estuary. You saw in my presentation, what contributes a major part is the discharges from the lake or the runoff from other industries. But septic tanks are an issue. So yes, we need to, Mark County, again, stepped up to the plate in 2015. and
There's
began hooking up.
municipalities spraying poison to control.
Yes, and he makes a valid point. Fertilizer ordinances, things that we do, the city of Stuart passes, other municipalities up and down our coast have passed ordinances. It's localized, doing something about it can be a very, very local situation, whether it's a county, municipality, or even an individual like me, living in my house and making sure that my runoff isn't gonna affect our waterways. All of us need to be responsible and help join together to be responsible for waterways. I'm gonna take two more, and then we gotta get going. Yes.
Well, don't
Jackie
you
and then-
think that Florida has to decide what we want to be? And we have to plan for the big picture in the future. And things like all those highways that the governor has just decided to build is ridiculous. What are they gonna do? They're gonna bring more people here. And we don't really want that many more people
Understood, it's a growth issue.
The growth issue is something that the Rivers Coalition has never dealt with. And now the herbicide thing, I mean, when I went to the Fish and Wildlife Commission, there were like, out of 35 speakers, 10 of us or 12 of us were talking about that. And on Tuesday, the commission is going to be voting on changes to the comp plan in the CRAs that are going to do damage to the rivers. You've got to pay attention to all of those things.
Well, we need to bring those forward specifically to how they
Please,
affect the.
I'd like us to make a resolution about herbicides.
Well, let's bring that up at the next
Could
meeting.
we bring that up at the next meeting? Thanks.
Charles,
I think
and
we're all
then-
just saying, let's consider Florida and the watershed as a whole, and not just in our own backyard, which I get that this group is for our estuaries, but you can't, we are not an isolated part of it.
We understand that.
I don't-
We do understand.
But your
Yes, we-
actions don't say that that's what you're working for, and that's
Listen,
what a lot of us
listen,
have a problem
There are many of us
with.
who are involved in a large situation, going to Tallahassee, DC. We do it, we put our boots to the ground. and
I
do
know
it.
you do.
I know you.
It's honestly not your intent that I question.
Well-
It's the people that you're following and giving into on the grander scale and the political scheme who are using you and using us.
All right, well, we'll have other discussion. One more thing, and then we're
I
gonna.
heard a comment earlier about what is being done about cleaning up the water. Since we turned over the Board of Governors, since we got a real executive director there, if you remember, a few months ago, we were talking about Sunbreak Farms and spreading biosolids on 7,000 acres right next to one of our major canals. Well, the new water management district turned down their permit. When was the last time you heard something like that? And isn't that something to say thank you for? And I just want to remind you, this is a big operation. They're coming back at you. Stay strong.
Stay strong. All right.
Just remember, Mike, this is a beautiful place, we're gonna have more people wanna come here.
Okay. But we gotta control the amount of growth, and the way you do that is density and how many units per acre. Martin County's done a great job with that, so just.
Can you?
One,
I like to reference your graphs from Florida Oceanographic. So can you talk about,
it's
yeah,
a
good.
local update, and we're gonna give that in a few minutes.
Okay, good.
Mark, can I mention one thing?
Rivers Coalition, now we got, yep. Yep.
You know, I've attended some of the past few workshops at the Water Management District and heard the changes, and they are addressing Florida's water issues as a whole. And one of the things, talking about operation, as Mark touched on, that I didn't know was just the natural ecology of the lake. The water flowing out the west, because it flows through miles of marshland, is tremendously less polluted than the same water we get flowing to the east. And that's literally just an operational trend. So if you ask, where is the water gonna go? Water coming east is almost 4 times more polluted coming east. And so even though we're not getting nearly the same amount of water, we're getting the same amount of pollutants. So just tweaking that, as it's been touched on by some of the comments, of directions it's going and taking advantage of the natural ecology of the lake tweaking the operations is something which the board, the new board, is looking at doing and stuff, can make improvements without having to wait on these long-term projects. So that there are solutions, and I know personally from attending some of these workshops that the new board is looking at Florida's waterways as a whole. And just to downplay one attempt at a solution to cure the problem because it doesn't solve the entire problem is not something we should be doing. We should all be united in working towards the entire problem, whether it's local pollutants, state pollutants, natural pollutants, but we're all in this together.
Committee updates from Speaker Bureau. Todd.
Okay, I'm Todd Weissing. I'm the coordinator of the Speakers Bureau, and this last Thursday, we were invited to speak at the Sunrise Rotary Club. Great meeting, great people. They do a lot of good. Two things that we talk about a lot of topics, but two things we talk about is to educate the people that we want that lake to be lower at the end of the dry season. We also want whatever legislation we can get that will stop the Army Corps of Engineers from purposely sending what they admitted is toxins to us. That's what we want. Our talks are 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever they need, whatever the group needs. It was interesting though, after our talk, I had the opportunity to mix with a 25-year veteran of sugar. And she proceeded to tell me that Todd Thurlow shared with us 2 meetings ago satellite pictures of Lake Okeechobee and how it was covered 90% with bacteria, toxic bacteria that was released onto us, and she told me that was a doctored photo. I wanted to say that she was so upset that in the last 15 years, we had 1 year that we had a drought. And I replied, we've had 9 years where that water, which is alien to us, was released to us. She could not sail her boat through the locks. We send people to the hospital, people go to the hospital. So, here's my point. They have a different message than we do. How do we get our message outside of these doors to the population? Because their message, they're going to invite you out there. All I ask, if you're a member of an organization, you need a speaker, see me, we'd love to come out. If you have a friend or family member, phone a friend. If they have meetings and they're looking for speakers, see us, contact me, contact Barbara, contact the website. We're kind of interesting, fun people to come and talk to. Yes,
So we're going to do a local update real quick in 3 minutes or less. Mark is going to talk about the river people, and then we'll have member announcements. So our water quality has been pretty good, obviously, if you've been out in the estuary over the last weeks. We're doing some annualization of what that looks like over this past year and looking at longer term. I appreciate Becky Harris being at these meetings, holding up the one from good levels to bad levels like last year. So it's really good. Our citizen water quality monitoring, we have over 40 water testers throughout the estuary that weekly test the water right there at their docks, and they give us that report. It's been very helpful over the years, and we're meeting with the Marine Resources Council and others to expand that network to include things like nitrogen and phosphorus, and not just our parameters there. So we're going to start updating that, and we've gotten some funding to help support that. So I appreciate our water testing. Otherwise, really enjoy the local waters while we can. I mean, we know, well, it's going to happen, you know, it's taking a long time to fix this. Why does it take a long time? Because every 2 or 4 years, we got a whole new group of politicians or political leaders that we have to re-educate, get up to speed, and do the problem. But fortunately, we have a great governing board in the water district. We've got other political leaders that we can work through and get to, and let's get this thing going. We got a lot more voices now than we did back about 10 years ago, right, Jackie? So we are more powerful now than we were before. So let's keep the voice strong about stopping these discharges, cleaning up our river. But go out and enjoy it. Really do. Go out and enjoy it. Indian River Keeper update. Marty Bond.
On June 30th, I spoke at the Universalist Church. I gave a sermon, actually. Water is Life was the subject. It was quite the honor. It really was.
It was very good.
Along with Jim Moyer, I spent 7 days on the water across 2 weeks with the Georgia Aquarium participating in the HERA project, capturing wild dolphins in the Northern Lagoon. I got to reestablish some friendships and learned a ton. I now have 106 peer-reviewed published articles about the HERA project dating back to 2003 concerning our dolphins. Good science. We made 26 captures, 19 of them led to 70-point physicals. Of the 7 releases, 2 were young males who got excited and their heart rate wouldn't go down, and the other 5 were females that were pregnant. We capture them, we settle them down, we sex them. If it's a girl, we sonogram them. If they're pregnant, we put a tag on their fin and get them out. The last thing that we want to do is hurt the animals. Animal Planet filmed us for 5 days. They interviewed me. So, listen, Dr. Bossert holds tight. If I had pulled out my phone and taken a picture, I would have been sent home. They don't allow any information that doesn't go through them. And so it really pleases me that Animal Planet is going to show what we did. It's the coolest thing I've ever done. It really is. While I was out there, I traveled up to Edgewater. It's almost New Smyrna, to meet with Libby Levette. She wants to be the Mosquito River Lagoon waterkeeper. We went out on the lagoon. We visited Cedar Creek Clam Farm, where I did some work a number of years ago. Water management wiped him out. They did some work up there, and dissolved oxygen went to 0, and the finest, most tasty oysters and clams I've ever put in my mouth all died because of lack of oxygen. We had a meeting there that included the graduation ceremonies of an environmental class taught at Bethune-Cookman and a lunch. Libby's currently sick from a harmful algal bloom in the canal behind her house. And I was aggressive about this. This is cumulative. Stay out of the damn water. There's no need to clean anything. Get yourself healthy. Saturday is Treasure Coast cleanup. I'll be at Sanskrit Park helping to collect trash off the spoil islands. Once again, April Price has ramrodded this, and she's doing a fine job. I found my St. Lucie Initiative pennant from the early 90s. My de-ooze it or lose it. It's on my boat. Mark also has something at Shepherd's Park, which is the same day, the same thing. So there's lots of activities going on Saturday where you can get involved and clean things up and help us. The water's clean. You know, let's clean the shores and clean the islands a little bit while we can without getting sick. Sunday I speak to the Humanist Church. It'll be a PowerPoint about the history of our lagoon. I'm going to take you from Ponce and Menendez to Alvera Mexia and then up. August 1st, of course, is the Harmful Algal Bloom Task Force. August 23rd, I go to Orlando to meet with Waterkeeper Florida and FDEP concerning our upcoming triennial review for human health criteria. This is our second Orlando meeting and I think our third or fourth with FDEP. Welcome, Director. We would expect some more workshops coming in August. Demand clean water.
Hey. So we have a couple of minutes we want to take for member announcements. We have some from our organization. Michelle, are you here? Michelle, give us some announcements about upcoming shell bagging, things that we do to help you.
Well, August 5th is actually World Oyster Day, so if you guys eat oysters, I encourage you to celebrate by eating them at our floor partner restaurants. Currently, we have a dozen restaurants that recycle the shell with us, and we use that for our oyster baggings, which the next one will be August 29th. We're also still in seagrass season, so we're doing seagrass matting on August 5th and a seagrass survey on August 21st. Which the water's been clearer for us to do that. And then if you guys enjoy Mulligan's next door, you could come out and we're the supporting charity for every Thursday night in August. If you guys want a newsletter, there's some back there, or you could check us out online.
Great. This Saturday, I think it's TC Waterway cleanup. So he's at Spoil Island. restaurants or other places. And wherever you are, you don't have to be at an organized event. You can just get out along the shoreline and pick up trash.
I clean the water every day.
You do every day, fishermen usually do, people do, so pick up trash. It's not, it may be not something you put on the ground, but we need to pick it up, get it out of the water. So that's cool. Any other member announcements? Thank you very much for coming out tonight, really appreciate it.
I'll see you again. So I should